I was buttoning up my navy wool coat, humming quietly while checking my reflection in the hallway mirror. Sunday brunch at Sarah's place had become our weekly tradition since Mom and Dad died, and today felt especially meaningful. Emma's engagement ring sparkled on my finger where I'd been testing how it looked, planning to surprise my sister with our announcement. Sarah had been my rock through the grief, working countless hours to help save our family construction business. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Marcus Sullivan, our family lawyer, never texted on weekends. The message made my blood freeze. Call me now, do not go there. Something about Sarah's secret plan that would change everything. In those terrifying words, my entire world shattered. My hands shook as I dialed Marcus's number, the phone ringing endlessly, while dread filled my chest like ice water. When he finally answered, his voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. "Johnathan, thank God you called before leaving. Sit down. What I'm about to tell you will destroy everything you believe about your sister." I collapsed onto my leather sofa, still wearing my coat. "Marcus, what are you talking about? Sarah's expecting me in 20 minutes. Sarah has been forging your signature on property transfer documents for the past 3 months. She's stolen 4 commercial properties worth $2.1 million. The words hit me like physical blows. That's impossible. Sarah would never. I have the evidence right here. Title documents, signature analyses, banking records. She created a shell company called Riverside Holdings LLC and transferred your properties without your knowledge." My vision blurred as Marcus explained how he'd discovered the fraud. A title company had called his office Friday afternoon, questioning signature discrepancies on the Maple Street office building transfer. When Marcus investigated, he found a pattern that made his stomach turn. The Morrison Plaza Shopping Center, the downtown warehouse, the Elm Street duplex, and the Riverside apartment building all transferred to her company using forged signatures. She's been using her administrative access to process the paperwork, then signing your name with remarkable precision. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited. Sarah, my little sister who'd cried at our parents' funeral, who'd stayed up until 3 a.m. helping me sort through Dad's business files, who'd hugged me when I broke down over the mounting debt. The same person who'd comforted me through panic attacks was systematically stealing my inheritance. "How is this even possible?" I whispered into the phone. Marcus's voice grew grimmer. "It gets worse, Johnathan. Today's brunch isn't just family time. Sarah has called an emergency meeting with your Aunt Margaret and Uncle Robert. She's prepared fabricated evidence of your supposed mismanagement of the company. Her plan is to convince the family that you're incompetent and need to be removed from all business operations." The room spun around me. Evidence of what mismanagement? I've been working 16-hour days to keep us afloat. She's created false financial reports showing massive losses under your leadership, while hiding the fact that her theft is what's causing the cash flow problems. She's been documenting every mistake you've made over the past year, no matter how minor, and presenting them as evidence of your unsuitability to run the family business. I thought about all the times Sarah had offered to handle paperwork while I dealt with construction sites and client meetings. How she'd volunteered to manage the administrative side so I could focus on operations. The access I'd given her to bank accounts, legal documents, and property records, all out of trust and gratitude for her support. The signature analysis shows she's been practicing your handwriting for months, Marcus continued. Probably since right after the funeral. This isn't a crime of opportunity. It's a calculated long-term plan to steal your inheritance. My engagement ring felt heavy in my pocket. How could I marry Emma when I might lose everything? How could I start a family when my own sister was destroying me? Marcus, what do? Do I confront her at brunch? Absolutely not. If you show up there today, you'll be walking into an ambush. She's counting on surprising you with the family's intervention. We need more evidence before we make any moves. But Johnathan, his voice cracked slightly. I've been your family's lawyer for 15 years. I watched you grow up. What she's done to you? It's the most heartless betrayal I've ever witnessed. I ended the call and sat in my empty apartment still wearing my coat, staring at the wall, where a framed photo showed Sarah and me celebrating the completion of our first independent construction project. Her smile looked genuine, loving, proud. When had it become a mask? When had the sister I'd trusted with my life decided to destroy me? The worst part wasn't the money. It was the realization that every conversation, every hug, every moment of supposed grief and support had been performed while she plotted my downfall. She'd been studying my weaknesses, documenting my struggles, and preparing to use my trust against me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Where are you? Margaret and Robert are already here. We're all worried about you." Worried about me. The cruelty of those words, knowing what I now knew, made me physically ill again. Marcus arrived at my apartment within an hour, carrying 2 banker's boxes and wearing the expression of a man who'd seen too much. He spread financial documents across my dining room table like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that formed a picture of systematic betrayal. The property theft is just the beginning, he said, pulling out bank statements marked with yellow highlighter. Sarah has embezzled $400,000 over the past 6 months through payroll manipulation, fake vendor payments, and diverted client deposits. He showed me payroll records where Sarah had created phantom employees, people who didn't exist, but received weekly paychecks deposited into accounts she controlled. Jessica Martinez, David Thompson, Robert Chen, all fictional workers whose salaries totaled $8,000 per month. Look at these vendor payments. Marcus continued sliding invoices across the table. Superior building supplies, elite construction materials, premium hardware solutions. None of these companies exist. Sarah created fake letterheads, fake invoices, and fake purchase orders. Every payment went to accounts she established using these fictional business names. The scope of her deception staggered me. While I'd been managing construction crews and meeting with clients, Sarah had been running an elaborate embezzlement operation from the office next door. She'd used her knowledge of our accounting system to create false entries that balance perfectly, making the theft virtually invisible during casual reviews. "But there's more," Marcus said grimly. "She's been actively sabotaging your business relationships to create evidence of your supposed incompetence." He produced email printouts showing correspondence between Sarah and potential clients. The Morrison family had contracted us to build their $800,000 custom home last winter. Construction was scheduled to begin in March, but they'd suddenly canceled in February, citing concerns about our reliability. Sarah sent them false information about material delays and permit problems that didn't exist. She told them you'd taken on too many projects and couldn't guarantee completion dates. When they called to express concerns, she scheduled the meeting for a day when you were visiting the bank, then told them your absence proved their point about your unreliability. The revelation hit me like a physical assault. I remembered how devastated I'd been by the Morrison cancellation. Sarah had comforted me that night, bringing coffee and telling me that some clients were impossible to please. She'd held my hand while I worried about meeting payroll without that contract, all while knowing she was the reason we'd lost it. Marcus showed me similar patterns with 3 other major clients. Thompson Development had canceled a $1.2 million office complex renovation after Sarah provided incorrect architectural specifications to their planning committee. When the city planning department rejected our proposal twice, Thompson assumed we were incompetent and hired Blackwood Construction instead. Every business failure over the past year can be traced back to Sarah's interference, Marcus explained. She's been systematically destroying your reputation while stealing money to cover the resulting cash flow problems. The bank statements revealed Sarah's secret lifestyle. While I'd been eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner to save money, she'd been spending stolen funds on designer clothes, expensive dinners, and luxury vacations. a charge for $4,000 at Nordstrom the same week I'd had to delay paying our employees, a first-class flight to Hawaii while I was taking business loans to cover operating expenses. She bought a brand new BMW last month, Marcus said, showing me the financing documents. $35,000 down payment made from a company account she established without your knowledge. I thought about all the times Sarah had complained about money problems, how she'd declined dinners and activities because of her tight budget. She'd even borrowed $300 from me 6 weeks ago for her rent payment, then used that money for a weekend spa retreat while spending thousands of my stolen funds. Marcus pulled out another stack of documents. The most damaging part is what she's done to your vendor relationships. She's been ordering materials and services in the company name, then canceling orders at the last minute or refusing payment on fabricated quality complaints. Hardware Palace had banned us from their store after Sarah disputed 8 separate orders claiming defective materials and demanding full refunds. She'd ordered $15,000 worth of premium lumber for a project, then called 3 days later claiming the wood was warped and unusable, demanding a complete replacement. When they refused, she'd filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. Your reputation with suppliers is destroyed, Marcus said. Half the vendors in the city either won't work with you or demand payment up front because of Sarah's manufactured disputes. He showed me how she'd created a comprehensive plan to make the business appear to be failing under my management. Every problem, every delay, every financial shortfall could be traced to her interference. But the pattern was invisible, unless you knew to look for it. She's been documenting all of this. Marcus continued, pulling out a folder marked Johnathan's Management Issues. Photos of delayed projects caused by her canceled material orders, emails from upset clients who received her false information, financial reports showing losses created by her theft, all presented as evidence of your incompetence. The folder contained dozens of pages chronicling my supposed failures as a business leader. Sarah had been building a case against me for months, creating a paper trail that would justify removing me from the company I'd inherited from our parents. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a text message thread. 3 potential buyers have already contacted me asking about purchasing Sullivan Construction assets. Sarah reached out to them last week claiming you're desperate to sell because of financial difficulties. She's offering the company at 40% below market value. I stared at the messages, each one another nail in the coffin of my trust. Sarah hadn't just stolen my money, she'd stolen my future, my reputation, and my ability to carry on our parents' legacy. Every day I'd spent working to honor their memory, she'd been plotting to destroy everything they'd built. Why? I whispered. We inherited the business equally. She already owns half of everything. Why destroy me? Marcus's expression grew even darker. Because owning half isn't enough for her, Johnathan. She wants it all, and she's willing to destroy you completely to get it. The weight of total betrayal settled on my shoulders like a physical burden. Sarah hadn't just stolen money, she'd stolen 18 months of my life, making me believe we were struggling together when she was actively destroying everything I'd worked to preserve. Marcus reached into his briefcase and withdrew a thick manila folder that would shatter the last pieces of my world. What I'm about to show you is the most heartbreaking part of Sarah's plan, he said quietly. She hasn't just been stealing from the business, she's been poisoning your entire family against you. He opened the folder to reveal printed emails, recorded phone conversations, and handwritten notes that documented months of calculated manipulation. Sarah had been conducting a systematic campaign to convince our extended family that I was an unreliable, destructive failure. Your Aunt Margaret has been receiving weekly phone calls from Sarah for the past 4 months. Marcus explained, playing an audio recording on his phone. Listen to this conversation from 2 weeks ago. Sarah's voice filled the room, sweet and concerned. I'm so worried about Johnathan, Aunt Margaret. I think he's developed a serious gambling problem. I found betting slips in his office, and there are huge withdrawals from company accounts that he can't explain. Margaret's shocked response broke my heart. "Oh my God, Sarah. Just like his great uncle Harold. Is that why the business is struggling?" "I'm afraid so. He owes money to some very dangerous people. I've tried to help him, but he gets angry and defensive whenever I bring it up. I think he needs professional help, but I don't know how to make him see it." Marcus paused the recording. "She's been providing your aunt with fabricated evidence of this supposed gambling addiction. Bank statements that show large withdrawals labeled as cash advances, edited to remove any reference to legitimate business expenses. He showed me the fake documents Sarah had created. Withdrawal slips that originally showed payments to lumber suppliers had been altered to show cash advances. Check stubs for equipment purchases had been modified to suggest gambling losses. The detail and planning required for such deception was staggering. Margaret has already changed her will," Marcus continued. "She removed you as beneficiary of her $3 million estate last week. Sarah convinced her that giving you access to that money would enable your supposed addiction and potentially endanger the entire family. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Aunt Margaret had helped raise me after my parents divorced when I was 8. She'd been at every birthday, every graduation, every important moment of my life. The thought of her believing such lies about me was almost unbearable." Marcus played another recording, this one between Sarah and my Uncle Robert. Sarah's voice carried perfectly calculated notes of reluctance and pain. "Uncle Robert, I need to share something with you, but it's going to hurt. I found these emails on Jonathan's computer." She paused as if struggling with the decision to continue. "He's been writing terrible things about you. He called your business advice outdated garbage from an old fool who never understood modern construction. He said Dad only listened to you out of pity." Robert's wounded voice responded, "I can't believe this. After everything I've done to help him build that company, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to tell you, but when he started talking about cutting you out of business decisions entirely, I felt you needed to know. He thinks you're holding him back from modernizing the company." Marcus showed me the fake emails Sarah had created using my name. Professional-looking correspondence that perfectly mimicked my writing style, filled with cruel dismissals of Robert's contributions and mocking references to his age and experience. "Robert has been advocating for your removal from the company," Marcus explained. "He's been calling family members, urging them to intervene before you completely destroy your parents' legacy. The systematic destruction of every relationship I valued most was breathtaking in its cruelty. Sarah hadn't just stolen money, she'd stolen the love and respect of the people who'd shaped my life." Marcus pulled out transcripts of conversations Sarah had held with various family members over the past several weeks. She told cousin Jennifer that I'd become violent and unpredictable, claiming I'd thrown a hammer through the office window during a frustrated outburst. She'd informed Uncle David that I'd been drinking heavily on job sites, creating safety hazards for the work crews. "Every conversation follows the same pattern," Marcus noted. "Sarah positions herself as the concerned sister trying to help, reluctantly sharing evidence of your deterioration. She never directly suggests action. She lets the family members reach their own conclusions about what needs to be done." The psychological sophistication of her manipulation was terrifying. Sarah understood exactly how to present information to each family member in ways that would maximize their emotional response and minimize their critical thinking. Marcus showed me a group text thread between family members that Sarah had initiated 3 days ago. The messages revealed the full extent of her success in turning them against me. "Margaret, we can't let this continue. Johnathan needs help whether he wants it or not." Robert, "The business is failing because of his poor decisions. We have a responsibility to protect what his parents built." Jennifer, "I'm scared of what he might do if we corner him. Sarah says he's been increasingly angry and unpredictable." David, "Maybe we should contact that addiction counselor Margaret mentioned. This has gone too far." "Today's brunch was planned as an intervention," Marcus explained. "Sarah convinced everyone that surprising you with a united family front is the only way to break through your supposed denial and get you the help you allegedly need." I imagined walking into Sarah's house, expecting a pleasant family meal and an engagement announcement, only to be confronted by relatives armed with fabricated evidence of my personal and professional failures. The cruelty of that ambush, orchestrated by someone I trusted completely, was beyond comprehension. Marcus pulled out one final document that destroyed any remaining hope I had for family support. Sarah has been in contact with Dr. Patricia Hoffman, a psychiatrist who specializes in addiction intervention. Dr. Hoffman has agreed to attend today's meeting to provide professional guidance for your family's confrontation. The preparation, the attention to detail, the months of planning required to orchestrate such complete destruction of my relationships, it demonstrated a level of calculated malice that I struggled to associate with the sister I thought I knew. Why would she do this? I asked, my voice barely audible. Even if she wants the business, why destroy my relationships with people who love me? Marcus's expression grew grim. Because isolated people make easier victims, Johnathan. By turning your family against you, Sarah eliminates any support system you might rely on to fight back. When she presents her final demands, you'll have nowhere to turn and no one to believe your side of the story. The full scope of Sarah's plan began to crystallize in my mind. She wasn't just stealing money or property, she was systematically dismantling every source of emotional, financial, and social support in my life. By the time she finished, I would be completely alone with no choice but to surrender everything to her control. There's one more thing, Marcus said quietly. Sarah has been recording private conversations with you over the past several months. She's edited them to remove context and make your words sound threatening or irrational. He played a brief audio clip where my voice said, "If anyone tries to take this company from me, I'll destroy them first. I don't care what it costs or who gets hurt." That's from when you were discussing the Henderson lawsuit 3 months ago, Marcus explained. You were talking about fighting back against their frivolous claim, but Sarah edited it to sound like a general threat against anyone who challenges your control of the business. The systematic documentation of fabricated evidence, the careful manipulation of family relationships, the strategic timing of today's intervention, every element of Sarah's plan demonstrated months of preparation and an understanding of psychology that terrified me. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd studied me, learned my weaknesses and relationships, then used that knowledge to destroy everything I cared about. The sister I'd grieved with, worked alongside, and trusted completely, had been my greatest enemy all along. Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up files that would reveal the true scope of Sarah's conspiracy. What I'd learned so far was only the surface of a scheme that had been in motion since the day our parents died. I need you to understand that Sarah began planning this the moment she left the funeral. Marcus said, his voice heavy with disgust. While you were grieving and trying to hold the business together, she was laying groundwork for your complete destruction. He showed me bank records dating back 18 months. Within a week of our parents' funeral, Sarah had opened 5 different business accounts using variations of our company name: Sullivan Construction Services, Sullivan Building Group, Sullivan Development, LLC. Each designed to confuse clients and vendors while providing her with vehicles for theft. She used your grief as cover to gain access to every system, every account, every relationship your parents had built, Marcus explained. Remember how she volunteered to handle administrative tasks while you dealt with construction sites? She was actually conducting reconnaissance, learning every aspect of the business so she could systematically dismantle it. The laptop screen showed a spreadsheet that made my blood run cold. Sarah had created a detailed timeline for my destruction with specific milestones and target dates. Phase 1, gain access and begin theft. Completed by month 3. Phase 2, sabotage business relationships. Completed by month 8. Phase 3, isolate from family support. Completed by month 15. Phase 4, Force surrender of assets. Scheduled for today's date. Marcus clicked to another tab showing correspondence I'd never seen before. Sarah has been bribing City Inspector Jake Morrison with $5,000 per month to fail your construction inspections. Look at these text messages between them. Sarah, the Riverside apartment project needs to fail inspection on Tuesday. Make it something expensive to fix. Jake, consider it done. Foundation work will need to be completely redone. Should cost them at least $50,000. Sarah, perfect. That puts them another month behind schedule and gives me more evidence of Johnathan's project management failures. The messages revealed a systematic campaign to sabotage every major project we'd undertaken. The downtown office renovation that had failed 3 separate inspections, costing us $75,000 in delays and rework, all orchestrated by Sarah's bribes. The shopping center development that was rejected for building code violations that didn't exist, manufactured by a corrupt inspector Sarah had purchased. 3 major projects were deliberately sabotaged, Marcus continued. Each failure cost the company over $200,000 and damaged your reputation with clients, contractors, and suppliers. But the corruption extended far beyond building inspections. Sarah had been selling our confidential bid information to competitors for months. Marcus showed me bank deposits that corresponded exactly with dates when Sullivan Construction had submitted proposals for major contracts. The Civic Center renovation project, $2.8 million. You spent 3 weeks developing a comprehensive proposal only to be underbid by Blackwood Construction by exactly 2%. Sarah sold them your entire proposal for $50,000. The laptop screen displayed copies of our confidential bid documents with Blackwood Construction's letterhead. Our cost estimates, timeline projections, subcontractor relationships, everything we'd developed had been handed to our competitors, ensuring they could underbid us while maintaining profitable margins. When you lost that contract, Sarah comforted you and suggested that maybe you'd overestimated the scope of work, Marcus reminded me. She was consoling you for a loss she had orchestrated. The pattern extended to 6 different major contracts over the past year. Every significant bidding process had been compromised by Sarah's intelligence gathering for competitors. Sullivan Construction's reputation for being consistently overpriced was actually the result of systematic corporate espionage. Marcus opened another folder that revealed the most heartbreaking aspect of Sarah's plan: the systematic destruction of employee loyalty. Do you remember when Tom Rodriguez quit last month? Marcus asked. 15 years with your father? And suddenly he walked out claiming you'd insulted his work quality. He showed me a forged termination letter on company letterhead bearing a perfect reproduction of my signature. The letter informed Tom that his craftsmanship had declined significantly and that I was considering replacement with younger, more skilled workers. Sarah created similar letters for 8 different employees, Marcus explained. Master carpenter Lisa Hernandez received a fake letter claiming you wanted to replace her with male workers because you didn't believe women belonged on construction sites. The folder contained exit interviews Sarah had conducted with departing employees documenting their hurt feelings and anger toward me. She'd used their emotional responses as evidence of my poor management style and inability to maintain workplace relationships. Project manager Steve Wilson quit after receiving a fake memo saying you blamed him personally for the Morrison contract cancellation. Electrician Carlos Martinez left when Sarah showed him a falsified email where you allegedly called his work substandard immigrant labor. Each fabricated document was a masterpiece of deception, perfectly mimicking my writing style and business communication patterns. Sarah had studied my correspondence for months, learning to forge not just my signature, but my entire professional voice. Marcus scrolled to financial projections that revealed Sarah's ultimate goal. Once she gains control of your shares through the competency hearing she's planning, Sarah has already negotiated the sale of company assets to David Wright's investment group for $3.2 million. The laptop screen showed purchase agreements, asset valuations, and distribution plans. David Wright, our trusted business partner for 5 years, had been secretly working with Sarah to acquire Sullivan Construction at a fraction of its actual value. The contracts were complete, waiting only for Sarah to gain legal control of my ownership shares. The competency hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday, Marcus continued. Sarah has prepared extensive documentation of your supposed mental health deterioration, including staged photographs and edited recordings. He showed me pictures that had been taken during our Christmas party 3 months ago. In the original photos, I was laughing with employees and enjoying casual conversation. In Sarah's edited versions, the images had been cropped and adjusted to make me appear intoxicated and unprofessional. She hired a professional photographer to take these candid shots during company events, then paid a digital editing service to make you look unstable, Marcus explained. The timestamps and metadata have been altered to suggest these photos were taken during important business meetings. The level of planning and resources Sarah had invested in my destruction was staggering. She'd hired professional services, bribed government officials, and coordinated with multiple accomplices to execute a scheme that would leave me completely powerless. Marcus pulled up one final document that revealed the true scope of Sarah's malice. If the family intervention and competency hearing don't work, she's prepared a backup plan that would send you to federal prison. The screen displayed fabricated evidence suggesting I'd been embezzling from client trust accounts, a felony charge that would result in permanent disbarment from the construction industry and potential incarceration. Bank records showing fictional transfers, fake invoices for materials never purchased, falsified contracts with non-existent clients. Sarah has created an entire alternate reality where you're the criminal and she's the victim trying to protect the family business, Marcus said. If you resist her takeover, she's prepared to frame you for crimes that would destroy your life completely. The systematic nature of her planning, the attention to every detail, the backup plans, for every contingency, Sarah hadn't just betrayed me. She'd spent over a year studying how to inflict maximum psychological, emotional, and financial damage while protecting herself from any consequences. The woman you thought was grieving alongside you has been planning your complete destruction since the moment your parents died, Marcus concluded. And until yesterday, her plan was working perfectly. Marcus's expression grew even darker as he opened a new folder on his laptop, and I realized the nightmare was far from over. Sarah's backup plan is the most sinister part of her scheme, he said quietly. If the family intervention fails, and you somehow resist giving up your business shares, she's prepared evidence that would frame you for serious federal crimes. The laptop screen displayed bank records that looked official and legitimate, showing transfers from Sullivan Construction accounts to offshore gambling websites. The amounts were staggering: $15,000 to Paradise Casino Online, $25,000 to Lucky Slots International, $30,000 to High Stakes Poker Network. These are completely fabricated, Marcus explained, but they're sophisticated enough to fool any casual investigation. Sarah hired a professional document forger who specializes in financial fraud cases. The bank routing numbers are real, the timestamps are accurate, and the digital signatures match your banking profile perfectly. He scrolled through pages of fictional gambling debt documentation, threatening letters supposedly from loan sharks, text messages demanding payment, even voicemails that sounded like professional debt collectors. Sarah had created an entire false reality where I owed $300,000 to dangerous criminals. She's recruited 3 actors to pose as witnesses. Marcus continued showing me headshots and resumes from a talent agency website. Michael Torres, Jennifer Walsh, and David Kim, all experienced performers who've agreed to testify that you approached them about borrowing money for gambling debts. The actors had been coached with detailed scripts about fictional encounters where I'd supposedly begged for loans, claimed to be receiving death threats, and discussed hiding money from business partners. Their stories were consistent, believable, and completely false. If you refuse to surrender your business shares voluntarily, Sarah plans to call a family emergency meeting where these witnesses will testify about your dangerous associations, Marcus explained. She'll present the fabricated gambling evidence and claim you've endangered the entire family by borrowing from violent criminals. The psychological impact on our family would be devastating. They already believed I had gambling problems and poor judgment. Adding the element of physical danger would eliminate any remaining sympathy they might feel for my situation. But the gambling debts were only the beginning of Sarah's criminal frame-up. Marcus opened another folder that revealed evidence of supposed embezzlement from client trust accounts crimes that carried federal penalties and mandatory prison sentences. "Look at these purchase orders for building materials," Marcus said, displaying invoices from premium construction supplies. "According to these documents, you ordered $400,000 worth of steel and concrete for the Morrison family's custom home project." The invoices were perfectly legitimate-looking, complete, with delivery schedules, quality specifications, and payment terms. But Marcus highlighted a crucial detail: the Morrison family had canceled their project before any materials were ordered. Sarah created fictional purchase orders for materials that were never delivered, then fabricated bank transfers showing you diverted the money to personal accounts, Marcus explained. She's prepared evidence suggesting you stole $400,000 by ordering supplies for canceled projects and pocketing the payments. The scheme was brilliantly constructed. Sarah had used real vendor relationships, authentic pricing information, and legitimate billing procedures to create evidence of embezzlement that would be difficult to disprove without extensive forensic investigation. Marcus showed me falsified contracts with 3 different suppliers, each documenting fictional material purchases for projects that had been canceled before construction began. The total alleged embezzlement exceeded $800,000, enough to trigger federal prosecution and guarantee prison time. But there's more. Marcus continued, his voice barely containing his disgust. "Sarah has prepared medical evidence suggesting you suffer from severe mental health issues that require immediate intervention." The laptop screen displayed psychiatric evaluation reports bearing the letterhead of Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a respected psychiatrist in downtown Seattle. According to the fabricated documents, I'd been receiving treatment for gambling addiction, bipolar disorder, and antisocial personality disorder for the past 6 months. The reports describe violent outbursts, paranoid delusions, and diminished capacity for business decisions, Marcus explained. Dr. Morrison allegedly recommended immediate hospitalization and removal from all financial responsibilities. The medical records were supported by fabricated appointment schedules, prescription records, and therapy session notes. Sarah had created an entire fictional treatment history that painted me as mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. Marcus played audio recordings that had been edited to sound like therapy sessions. My voice taken from normal business conversations and manipulated to sound like psychiatric confessions. I don't trust anyone anymore. Sometimes I think about hurting people who try to control me. The voices in my head tell me that everyone is plotting against me. That's from 3 different phone conversations, Marcus explained. She took your words about legitimate business concerns and edited them to sound like paranoid delusions. The quality is professional enough to fool expert analysis. The systematic documentation extended to surveillance footage that Sarah had secretly recorded in our office. Hidden cameras had captured months of normal business activities, which she then edited to appear suspicious and threatening. In one clip, I appeared to be hiding documents in my desk drawer while looking around nervously. Marcus proved the footage had been manipulated. I'd actually been filing routine contracts, but the editing made it appear clandestine and suspicious. She's prepared to claim that you've been stealing client files, destroying evidence of embezzlement, and planning to flee the country with stolen funds, Marcus said. The edited surveillance footage supports every aspect of her criminal allegations. Sarah had even created false evidence of my supposed escape plans, fake travel itineraries to countries without extradition treaties, fictitious bank account information for offshore tax havens, and forged communications with international money transfer services. If you resist her takeover, Sarah is prepared to present law enforcement with a comprehensive criminal case, Marcus concluded. Gambling debts, embezzlement, mental health issues, and flight risk, everything needed to have you arrested and imprisoned while she assumes control of the business. The realization that Sarah had spent over a year preparing to send me to prison was almost impossible to process. She hadn't just planned to steal my inheritance, she'd prepared to destroy my life so completely that I could never recover or seek justice. The backup plan ensures that even if you somehow prove the business fraud, you'll be facing federal criminal charges that could result in 20 years in prison, Marcus explained. Sarah calculated that you'd rather surrender everything voluntarily than risk spending decades behind bars. Every aspect of her scheme demonstrated a level of malice that transcended simple greed. Sarah wasn't just stealing money, she was systematically destroying every relationship reputation and opportunity I'd ever have. The sister I'd trusted with my life had been planning my complete annihilation. Why, I whispered, staring at the fabricated evidence of crimes I'd never committed. Why go this far? Why not just steal money and disappear? Marcus's expression reflected the horror of what he'd discovered. Because Sarah doesn't just want your inheritance, Johnathan. She wants to erase you completely. She wants to be the only child, the only heir, the only person who carries on your parents' legacy. In her mind, you're not just an obstacle to overcome, you're competition to eliminate. Against every instinct and Marcus's urgent warnings, I made a decision that would prove catastrophic. I couldn't bear the thought of my family believing such terrible lies about me for another moment. I have to confront them, I told Marcus as he gathered the evidence files. I can't let Sarah destroy these relationships without fighting back. They deserve to know the truth. Marcus grabbed my arm as I headed for the door. Johnathan, you don't understand. Sarah has anticipated this exact scenario. She's prepared for you to arrive with accusations and evidence. Going there now will play directly into her hands. But 18 months of grief, exhaustion, and pressure had clouded my judgment. The thought of Aunt Margaret and Uncle Robert believing I was a gambling addict and business failure was unbearable. I convinced myself that showing them Marcus's evidence would open their eyes and expose Sarah's deception. I arrived at Sarah's house to find 4 cars in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see my entire extended family gathered in the living room, their faces grave and concerned. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the psychiatrist Sarah had recruited, sat in the armchair beside Aunt Margaret. Sarah answered the door with perfectly performed surprise and relief. Johnathan, thank God you're here. We've all been so worried about you. Her embrace felt warm and genuine. The same hug that had comforted me through countless difficult moments over the past year. I walked into the living room carrying Marcus's evidence folder, ready to expose the truth and vindicate myself. But the moment I began speaking, I realized how completely Sarah had outmaneuvered me. I know what you all think about me, I said, opening the folder. But Sarah has been lying to you. She's stolen money from the company, forged documents, and created false evidence to make me look incompetent. The family members exchanged concerned glances that immediately told me they'd been prepared for exactly this response. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward with practiced compassion. Johnathan, what you're experiencing is very common among people struggling with addiction, she said gently. The paranoid feelings, the blame shifting, the elaborate conspiracy theories, they're all symptoms of the psychological pressure you're under. I spread bank statements and signature analyses across the coffee table. Look at these documents. Sarah forged my name on property transfers. She's stolen over $2 million. Uncle Robert picked up one of the bank statements and shook his head sadly. These numbers don't make sense, Johnathan. You're seeing patterns that aren't there. Sarah had prepared for this moment perfectly. She pulled out her own folder containing the fabricated gambling records, fake medical reports, and edited surveillance footage. When I insisted the documents were forged, she showed them the supposedly independent evidence from her hired witnesses. Michael Torres contacted me last week, Sarah said, tears forming in her eyes. He's terrified because Johnathan owes his associates $50,000 and can't pay. He wanted to warn me that our entire family might be in danger. Aunt Margaret gasped and reached for Sarah's hand. The performance was flawless. Sarah appeared reluctant to share such painful information, protecting me, even while I attacked her credibility. When I tried to explain the construction site sabotage, Sarah produced the forged termination letters that showed my supposed abuse of employees. When I discussed the property theft, she showed them the fabricated psychiatric reports, suggesting my paranoid delusions. He's been secretly recording our family conversations, Sarah said, pulling out a small digital recorder. Dr. Hoffman says this kind of surveillance behavior indicates severe psychological deterioration. Every piece of evidence I presented was countered by more convincing fabrications. Sarah had spent months preparing responses to every possible accusation, while I was improvising desperately with complex financial documents that required detailed explanation. Dr. Hoffman spoke with authority that carried more weight than my emotional protests. Johnathan, the gambling addiction has progressed to a point where you're experiencing breaks from reality. The paranoid delusions about family members, the financial confusion, the aggressive behavior, these are all documented symptoms. Within 30 minutes, my attempt to expose the truth had backfired completely. The family saw my evidence as confirmation of mental illness, my accusations as proof of paranoid thinking, and my emotional state as validation of their intervention. Uncle Robert stood up with finality. Johnathan, we're removing you from all business operations effective immediately. You need professional help, not business responsibilities. The bank accounts were frozen within hours, based on Sarah's fraud allegations. Key employees quit rather than work for someone they believed was mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. Our largest client, Thompson Development, canceled their contract after Sarah privately shared the fabricated evidence of my problems. Emma called that evening from her sister's house. Her voice was shaky and uncertain. Johnathan, Sarah showed me some very disturbing documents, bank records, medical reports. She's worried that you might hurt yourself or someone else. I think I need some time to process everything. Emma, please. None of it is true. Sarah has been... She played me a recording of you threatening to destroy anyone who tries to take the company from you. Your voice sounded so angry, so different from the man I thought I knew. The edited audio clip had been Sarah's final manipulation. Emma moved out that night taking only her clothes and the engagement ring I'd planned to present at Sunday brunch. Within 48 hours of my failed confrontation, I had lost my business, my family's trust, my fiancé, and my reputation. Construction crews refused to work for Sullivan Construction. Suppliers demanded payment in advance. Clients canceled contracts based on concerns about my stability. The family met without me and voted unanimously to establish a trust controlled by Sarah to protect the business from Johnathan's self-destructive behavior. Legal documents were prepared transferring my shares to the family trust with Sarah as the sole trustee and beneficiary. Marcus called with devastating news. The competency hearing has been moved up to this Friday. Sarah's lawyer is arguing that your behavior yesterday proves you're in immediate danger to yourself and the business. They have psychiatric testimony, family testimony, and enough fabricated evidence to guarantee the outcome. I sat alone in my empty apartment staring at legal papers that would formalize my surrender of everything my parents had built. Sarah had visited that afternoon with Dr. Hoffman, presenting the transfer documents as necessary therapy for my recovery process. Signing these papers will remove the financial pressure that's been driving your addictive behavior. Dr. Hoffman explained with professional compassion. It's an important step toward healing. Sarah held my hand while I signed away my inheritance. I know this is hard, she whispered, but I promise I'll take good care of everything until you're better. Her performance was perfect, the concerned sister making painful sacrifices to save her brother from self-destruction. Even as I signed the documents, part of me almost believed her compassion was genuine. The signatures made Sarah the controlling owner of Sullivan Construction, with full authority over all business decisions, assets, and financial accounts. I retained nominal ownership of 10%, just enough to avoid complete legal complications, but with no voting rights or access to company operations. That night, I called Marcus one final time. It's over. I've lost everything. His voice was heavy with defeat. Sarah's plan was perfect, Johnathan. She anticipated every move, prepared for every contingency, and manipulated every relationship. I've never seen anything like it. As I hung up the phone, I realized that Sarah's victory was complete. She had stolen my inheritance, destroyed my relationships, and convinced everyone I loved that she was protecting them from me. The sister I'd trusted with my life had executed the perfect crime, leaving me with nothing but the knowledge of how thoroughly I'd been betrayed. 3 days after signing away everything my parents had built, I was awakened by Marcus pounding on my apartment door at 6 in the morning. His expression carried something I hadn't seen in weeks: hope. Johnathan, get dressed immediately. Everything is about to change. He pushed past me into the apartment carrying a laptop and wearing the first genuine smile I'd seen since this nightmare began. I've been working with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit for the past 2 weeks. Sarah's embezzlement scheme constitutes federal wire fraud, and they've been building a case. I stared at him in disbelief. The FBI, how is that possible? Marcus opened his laptop and showed me surveillance footage from inside Sarah's BMW. David Wright has been under federal investigation for running similar inheritance scams involving other families across the Pacific Northwest. When I brought your case to Agent Rebecca Thompson, she realized Sarah's operation was part of a much larger conspiracy. The screen displayed audio recordings from inside David's office captured through court-authorized wiretaps. Sarah's voice filled the room, discussing plans I'd never heard before. The Morrison family will be next, Sarah was saying. Their father just died, and there's $3 million in real estate assets split between 2 brothers. I can run the same playbook we used on Johnathan: forge signatures, sabotage business relationships, turn them against each other. How many families have you targeted? David asked. This will be our 4th successful operation. The Seattle construction industry is perfect for this family businesses, with emotional heirs who trust each other completely. By the time they realize what's happening, we've already transferred millions to offshore accounts. Marcus paused the recording. Sarah wasn't just stealing from you, Johnathan. She's been running this scam with David Wright for over 2 years. You were just the most profitable target because of your parents' death and the business value. The FBI had documented Sarah's entire operation through wiretaps, financial surveillance, and cooperation from victims of previous schemes. The Henderson family had lost their restaurant business to identical tactics. The Rodriguez Construction Company had been bankrupted through the same pattern of embezzlement and family manipulation. Agent Thompson has recordings of Sarah discussing every aspect of her plan. Marcus continued playing another audio clip. Sarah's voice was cold and calculating. Johnathan is so pathetically trusting. He actually thanked me yesterday for handling the administrative work while he grieves. The fool has no idea I've been studying his handwriting for months, practicing his signature, and mapping every relationship he values. What about the family intervention? David asked. Perfect. I've convinced them he's a gambling addict and business failure. When I present the evidence next week, they'll beg me to take control of everything. Johnathan will be completely isolated with no choice but to surrender his shares or face criminal prosecution. The cruelty in her voice was devastating. This wasn't emotional betrayal driven by greed. It was a calculated business operation, where destroying my life was simply part of the profit margin. Marcus showed me financial records the FBI had recovered from Sarah's hidden accounts. Over the past 2 years, she and David had stolen $8.7 million from 4 different families. My losses represented the largest single target, but I was part of a systematic operation that had destroyed multiple families across the region. The FBI has been tracking offshore accounts, shell companies, and money laundering operations, Marcus explained. Sarah thought she was being clever with cryptocurrency transfers and foreign banks. But federal financial surveillance caught everything. At 8:30 that morning, I watched through my apartment window as FBI agents arrested Sarah in her BMW outside her luxury apartment building. She was leaving for a celebratory breakfast with David Wright, completely unaware that federal surveillance had been documenting their movements for weeks. The local news trucks arrived within an hour. Channel 7's morning broadcast led with footage of Sarah being led away in handcuffs, while reporters described the multi-million-dollar inheritance fraud scheme that targeted grieving families. My phone started ringing immediately. Aunt Margaret called first, her voice broken with remorse and shame. "Johnathan, I am so deeply sorry. We saw the news. How could we have been so blind? How could we have believed such terrible lies about you?" Uncle Robert's call came next, his voice heavy with guilt. "I helped destroy your reputation based on that woman's lies. I've been calling everyone in the construction industry explaining what really happened. Your name will be cleared." But the most meaningful call came from Emma. She was crying before she spoke. "I should have trusted you. I should have known you better than to believe those fabricated stories. Can you ever forgive me for abandoning you when you needed support most?" The FBI's financial recovery team worked with unprecedented speed. Sarah's offshore accounts were frozen, shell companies were dissolved, and stolen properties were returned to their rightful owners. The 4 commercial properties she'd transferred to Riverside Holdings LLC were back in Sullivan Construction's name within 72 hours. Agent Thompson explained the broader investigation during a meeting at the federal building downtown. Sarah Collins and David Wright were operating what we call an inheritance predator scheme. They targeted families experiencing grief-related vulnerability, then systematically destroyed relationships while stealing assets. Your case provided the evidence we needed to arrest them and shut down the entire operation. The recovered funds exceeded even Marcus's optimistic projections. Beyond my stolen money, Sarah had been required to forfeit profits from previous schemes, a total of $4.3 million in federal asset forfeiture that would be distributed among all victims. Jake Morrison, the corrupt city inspector, cooperated with federal investigators in exchange for reduced charges. His testimony revealed the full extent of construction site sabotage and permit manipulation that had destroyed multiple legitimate businesses while enriching Sarah's operation. Within a month, Sullivan Construction was not only fully operational, but thriving. Competitors who had benefited from Sarah's stolen bid information faced their own FBI investigations. When Blackwood Construction's corruption was exposed, Thompson Development canceled their contract and returned to Sullivan Construction with a $2.4 million renovation project. The employees Sarah had driven away with forged termination letters returned with new appreciation for my leadership. Tom Rodriguez brought his entire crew back, and Lisa Hernandez accepted a promotion to senior project manager. The workforce grew to 35 employees, larger than ever in the company's history. Uncle Robert joined the company as a consulting advisor, bringing decades of experience and industry relationships that accelerated our growth. His guidance helped secure 3 major municipal contracts worth over $5 million in total revenue. Aunt Margaret not only restored my inheritance in her will, but provided immediate financial backing for business expansion. Her investment allowed Sullivan Construction to purchase premium equipment and take on larger projects than my parents had ever imagined possible. But the most important restoration was my relationship with Emma. She moved back in 3 weeks after Sarah's arrest, and we spent countless hours rebuilding the trust that Sarah's manipulation had nearly destroyed. I learned something important about love, Emma said during one of our long conversations about healing from betrayal. Trust isn't just believing in someone during easy times. It's maintaining faith even when evidence seems to contradict what you know about their character. On a crisp October morning 6 months later, Emma and I were married in the backyard of the house my parents had built 40 years earlier. The wedding was attended by family members who had learned painful lessons about manipulation and trust, employees who understood the value of loyalty, and friends who had witnessed the power of perseverance through devastating betrayal. Sarah was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $800,000 in restitution. David Wright received 10 years for his role as the operations architect and his participation in multiple fraud schemes. Both were permanently barred from any involvement in financial services or business operations. During the sentencing hearing, I chose to address the court about the impact of Sarah's crimes. Your Honor, the defendant didn't just steal money, she stole relationships, trust, and peace of mind. She turned love into a weapon and used grief as an opportunity for exploitation. But her greatest failure was underestimating the strength that comes from genuine family bonds and honest business relationships. The experience transformed my approach to both personal relationships and business operations. Sullivan Construction now employs comprehensive financial oversight systems, multiple signature requirements, and regular third-party audits. We've never had another case of internal theft or fraud. More importantly, I learned to distinguish between healthy trust and naive vulnerability. True family loyalty is demonstrated through consistent actions over time, not just comforting words during difficult moments. The people who truly care about you will ask questions when they see concerning evidence rather than simply accepting accusations without investigation. Emma and I now run Sullivan Construction together with her accounting expertise, providing the financial oversight that prevents manipulation, and her emotional intelligence, helping maintain healthy relationships with employees and clients. Our partnership has grown the business beyond anything my parents achieved, while maintaining the integrity and community commitment they valued. As I finish telling this story, I want you to consider an important question: how well do you really know the people you trust most completely? Have you experienced situations where someone you loved used your trust against you? And how did you rebuild your ability to form healthy relationships afterward? The greatest lesson from this experience is that survival and success after betrayal isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about learning to recognize genuine loyalty, implementing proper safeguards, and choosing relationships with people whose actions consistently match their words. Thank you for listening to this story about overcoming family betrayal and business fraud. If this resonated with your own experiences of trust and recovery, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it provided helpful insights. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity and share it with anyone who might benefit from understanding how to rebuild after devastating betrayal. Remember that no matter how completely you might feel destroyed by someone's deception, there are always people and systems designed to help restore justice and rebuild what was taken from you. Your story isn't over just because someone else tried to write your ending.